on the other hand, I come in contact with people, and they're always telling me about eating at Aunt Daisy's house.
Maybe she had special.
And oh my goodness, I've heard so many people. Oh my goodness, how that good ham tasted, and those biscuits, and the vegetables, and the deep pies that she used to cook. And as you say, Eddie, it may be that these were special meals. We always had enough, and nowadays, why, you go to a restaurant, you got about 9 or 10 different vegetables to choose from. Well, we didn't have that many, but we still had 3 or 4 vegetables, and for breakfast, why, had plenty of eggs and bacon, fat back, what have you. Now, you want to follow a theme, and I believe the commencement of your theme was that I was to talk about retirement.
Right. First, let me ask you something. You know the house, Molly's house at Kellyton?
Yes.
Is it an old big house on a back road? Somebody's told me about a house, the Rozelle house at Kellyton, that's not on the Highway 9.
Mm-hmm.
That's some Rozelle lived right on Highway 9 at one time, didn't they? Kind of across from that little restaurant up there now.
Oh, I can tell you about that. Going out of Goodwater, going south toward Ellick City, on the left, before you get to the road that to the right goes to Montgomery, to the left goes to Ellick City.
Mm-hmm.
John L. Pearson lived.
Yeah.
And Aunt Molly, that is sister, married Stephen Pearson. And Uncle Stephen settled in Kellyton. And he was a unique individual in that, compared with other people, in that he raised potato slips. Now, he raised enough potato slips to ship out by the car loads, the train car
That's
loads.
Molly's husband.
Molly's husband.
All right, now, where did she live before? She lived at Kellyton before that, is that right?
She always lived at Kellyton.
A big white house?
No, I would say it was an unpainted house.
Well, somebody...
Let me first tell you want to know who lived on the left, going towards Kellyton, about halfway between, but it wasn't halfway between, it was close to the Goodwater, and that was John L. Pearson, and I was sort of giving you his background, and he was a bald-headed fella, and in some regards favored the Rozelles, looked a little bit like Daddy, and he was slow talking, and he had a white house. It was small and modest, and he lived with his wife there, and I think he had some children that were grown, and maybe they had living beyond Ellick City in that area toward the Georgia line, and he started raising apples. Of course, we raised apples up in Ashland, and I didn't think that that was unique, but he said that some of the agriculture people from Auburn University came over and saw what he was doing on that hillside farm. It was just a house and a few acres. And with those few acres, why, he had a bunch of apple trees. And that they talked to him about the apples. I'm getting my story a little bit mixed up. The people might have come from Auburn, but regardless who the people were, it was people that decided that you could raise apples in Tallapoosa County, Alabama. And thus it was that Tallapoosa County is now an apple raising country. And I have about 30-something pictures and diplomas. Hey, Ashley, come on in. I have around 36 pictures or diplomas hanging around my new office. I have the girls to go out all the time, get me a frame for this. I've got...
now, you know, I've got some things you might want to look at, you might want to...
Mm-hmm. And so... Albert Lee stopped off at John L. Pearson's house, and he got a picture of our granddaddy, Rozelle, John Rozelle, that fought 4 years in the Civil War in the artillery.
That's the picture with him sitting with his cap on?
Yeah, and I have in mind that that cap is certainly not a Confederate cap. It is. It looks more like a Yankee cap, and but it's a garb that no doubt the people at the picture taking place put him in maybe.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk about that a little bit, and we'll get the album out. I bet you that with this thing, you know, we can see the pictures now.
Yeah. I hope you have a picture. That's hanging in my office in Atmore. And but I saw a picture. I don't want to forget this because as a result of this interview, maybe the picture of John Rozelle can be found in his Confederate uniform with his 3 crosses denoting that he was a sergeant in the artillery during the Civil War.
Well, I want to cover him. You know.
Okay.
All right. Well, tell us right now. Tell us where you living, and you know about bring us up to date. And really, we need to know. We don't know too much. I've never even seen you in your law office. What brought you back to Atmore?
Well, of course, let me briefly state that I retired January the 19th, 1981. And for some almost 3 years, 81, 82, and until September 83, I was a supernumerary judge, or as it is called, at our court management office in Montgomery. I was what was known as an actively retired judge. And thus it was that I was called on to hold court here and there about the state. I held court in, I filled in for the circuit judge that was suspended in Baldwin County. And then I went up to Birmingham and held court. I was 4 or 5 months in Bay Minette with...
Now, why was he suspended?
Well, he was suspended, this particular judge, a couple of years ago. He was involved with an insurance company, and I think the thing that gave him a prison sentence was the fact that 2 people were swindled out of some money in which he and another fella, a sharpie, a real crook, I think everybody would agree, swindled these one blind person and one old person out of their savings. And of course he was tried for DUI, and they appointed me to try him, and I tried him. And Louis Stevens, the retired district attorney from Coffee County, came down to Baldwin County to prosecute. And if you read the newspapers, an account of the trial, quite a bit in the newspapers about it. Why, you would get the idea that the judge just turned him loose because he was a judge. But that was...
You being the judge that turned him loose.
Yeah, but that was not the case at all, because I would not have convicted anybody under like or similar circumstances. In the first place, he tested out .9, which is one below legal intoxication, notwithstanding the fact that you could be charged with DUI and be below .10, and he was .10, but that was in his favor, of course, and one thing being that he was driving and his car was wobbling all over the road. And the explanation for that was that he had had a blowout or tire trouble, and he had put one of these little tires, these newfangled tires that you find. I think I have one in my Cavalier Chevrolet out there, and it's relatively new, and we've never had to use it. In this particular car, we've never waited till we had trouble. We always go ahead of time and have it checked out, and so that would cause anyone to in observing the car, to think that the driver might be not normal. And but the trooper came up and, without too much preliminary, had him in handcuffs and had him in the back end of the car. And when he got to the station where he was given the test, the judge asked that he see them give him the test. And they would not, the test giver would not let him see that. And I don't think they let anybody see it. I've never actually seen one take the test, as I recall. But in any event, the testimony was that they tried to get him to blow in the balloon sort of thing, and the point being that he wasn't cooperating. He made several attempts. He couldn't do this, he couldn't do that, and so the trooper admitted that he, to the lawyer, either the prosecutor or defense lawyer, I guess the defense lawyer, that he wasn't positive that the reading was 9.9. And after the lawyers got through, I turned to the state trooper and I said, Mr. State Trooper, you mean to tell me that you don't know whether this reading is 27 or 3 or 4 or 9? And he said, no, and I can care less. And I said words to the effect, Mr. Trooper, I've been a judge for 16 years, and I've never had any state trooper talk like you are talking, that you could care less. And he sort of shrugged his shoulders. And so I never was too satisfied that that he really was legally intoxicated. And another thing that happened, maybe I shouldn't go into all the details, but suffice it to say that they failed the state failed to prove the case. And Louis Stevens was I think, a brigadier general in the reserve. And he'd come to Bruton a lot of times to fill in for Wiley Henderson, our district attorney, when Wiley had the heart attack. And I knew him real well. And he tried that case real hard. But in a DUI case, a very pertinent question is not was he drunk, but the question being, what did he do or demonstrate? What did he do to demonstrate that he was drunk? And he never asked, Louis never asked that question. And I wanted someday to ask Louis a question to this effect. Louis, you've been trying cases for 20 or 30 years, and I know you've tried DUI cases. I used to call them DWI. I said, why didn't you ask the question? If you'd have asked the one question, I might have convicted the judge. Namely, what did he do? I don't know whether he was... All the evidence was that they smelled something, and the judge mentioned what he had drunk, which wasn't too much, and he was coming from Josephine, down there near your place at Gulf Shores, and that he had inherited that from his father-in-law, and all in all, they did not make a case, but we got off rambling on that little subject because that sort of...
After you retired, you were at Bayonet a while, and then you were also at Birmingham, weren't you?
Yeah, I was at Birmingham I guess they assigned me to a circuit judge in Birmingham trying divorces. And I think I would still be in Birmingham because they only had 2 judges, and they had a lot of divorces. And then they had a lot of contempt cases, rule nisi cases, which means that the judge has ordered husband or wife to do a certain thing, they hadn't done it, and they're in contempt of court.
Well, what was your routine? I mean, while you were up there, where did you stay, and did you
well, the routine was to live at the, well, I knew the name of the hotel until you got me routine. I was thinking about going to the library and stuff. We stayed at a certain hotel, and if you're an actively retired judge, why, all they do, we get a retirement, and then we get, at that time, we got 20 cents a mile and $30 a day. Well, Mary Jane was with me, and there's a motel down in Gulf Shores by that same name. As you come into Birmingham on the right, there's a hotel reserved for judges, juries, sheriffs, policemen, and we get a special rate. And our special rate was around $18 or $19 a night, but you and your wife can't live there and eat 3 meals a day on $30 a day. It has been increased. You do get $40 a day and 22 cents a mile. Incidentally, just in passing, right before I opened my law office in September of this year, 85, another judge got in trouble, Infinger, down in Baldwin County, and court management wanted to send me down there, and I refused that, and I said, you know, I lose money, and I am opening up a law office, even though I hadn't taken in any clients. By the time I took in 2 clients, court management called again and said, we want to send you to Mobile. They had the presiding judge, Hodnett, formerly of Atmore, had resigned, and District Judge Johnstone, that had been on too long, took Sullivan's place, Judge Sullivan, that got into some trouble. They promoted him to a circuit judgeship. They wanted me to take Johnstone's place, and said that court management, either Allen Tapley, the administrator, or Bo Talbot, the Chief Justice, said not only would I draw my retirement, but would draw the full pay of a district judge. I think it's around $5,400 a year. Well,
50,000?
Yeah, 54,000, somewhere in there. It's really increased. And by that time I had clients. And I'm going to explain in a minute or two that since I've opened up this office, why you still make more money practicing law than you. I mean, I've only been at it 2 months and know that, you know.
Well, that's nice, you know.
Yeah. Okay, following your theme, you wanted me to, I guess, get on down to this law practice and to make
all right, before you get, you were a judge in Mobile, and you were judge in Birmingham, and when you were in Birmingham, didn't you, weren't they having a lot of trouble with these women prostitutes, and isn't there a little story about you in an elevator, and you remember that, some woman got in, or
I know what you're talking about, and I'll explain when you give me a chance.
Okay.
But it wasn't while I was serving as a judge. You see, when you're a retired judge, or when you are a judge, well, you have seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And so every so often we went to Birmingham or Huntsville or Mobile or Montgomery, mostly Birmingham and Montgomery, and at the Parliament House we had this seminar, and of course I don't drink, and but I had learned that Sarah Gilbert, Sarah McKay, formerly of Atmore, was living in Birmingham, and I'd go out and see her sometime.
That's formerly of
Ashland. What did I say? Atmore. Ashland. And, you know, Mr. McKay, your daddy used to, well, you, wait a minute. Ashland. No, that was Albert Lee that used to, they had a big poultry farm right across from the school ground. They were sort of town poultry people. He was Mr. McKay, Sarah's daddy was born and reared right down here at Brownsville, and you know those McKays and Carmichaels, all of them were very professional. He was the postmaster down in South Alabama. He was a Republican, and he had this, well, he came to Ashland, didn't have a job, and so when you come to Ashland, don't have a job, and there was no industry at that time, why everybody started raising white chickens, and he said he had several hundred, and they were all laying eggs, and I believe Sarah didn't know me too well, even though I had a very close feeling toward her when I left Ashland, being some 2 years older to go to Washington, and but Albert Lee had he had not only helped clean up the chicken barns, what do you call those? Not barns, chicken houses. No, a coop is a little thing about that big to put the chicken coop. It was a chicken house. They started building long chicken houses, like the one that Bunyan Tolan had, if you remember that, where your mother, we drove up, looked down in the hollow from Bunyan's house, beautiful pasture, looked like a stream, had this long barn, and all you could see was hundreds and hundreds of white-legged chickens. And your mother, Lois, says, "Well, Bunyan, you certainly do have a lot of pullets." And whereupon Bunyan, Judge Tolan, probate judge, foreman, probate judge Stolen, who died recently, said, Lois, those are not, those are roosters, every one. So, for some reason, you know, you had some deal with the chicken feed people. What's the name of that chicken feed? They would build the barn, furnish the chickens, and you furnish the water and they furnish the feed. All you had to do is feed them and water them. And
that's still pretty busy around here.
Pretty big. Okay, well, we kind of got digressed just a little bit, but now bring it back to where you want me to be.
Well, it seems like there was a lot of talk in Birmingham, some lawyer or judge that
okay, there were in the newspaper the next morning, after I had gone out to visit Sarah McKay. Lois had died before I married Mary Jane. There were 4 judges that had been arrested that night, the night before that night, for, I don't know the specific charge, but it was for the girls for solicitation of the judges, and the judges for participating in the solicitation. But I had stayed out pretty late that night. I think it's the point that you want me to bring up, and I recall. And I stayed out pretty late, and I came back in, and I got to my elevator, and standing by the elevator was this cute little girl with little tan boots on to right along here. And I never had been formally introduced to her. I had never seen her before, but she said, Judge, don't you want some company? And I said, well, really, it is so late, I believe that I am on my way to bed, and thank you very much. And I may say that since we are making an interview, and it should reflect one's character and characteristics, had it been years before that, when I did drink monkey juice, why, I suspect that I would let her come in the room and we would have had a drink or two, but I can assure you that I would not, there would not have been any kind of commercial transaction, because it's just something I didn't believe in from the standpoint, if nothing more. I'm sure there must be other reasons, but suffice it to say, I couldn't imagine paying to be entertained. Is that the story that you was interested in?
All right, so you retired, you've been a judge in Mobile, and where else besides Mobile and Birmingham?
Well, after I really retired, and they had the Hugh Rozelle Day in Atmore, and had a lot of publicity, then, as I said, until September the 1st, 1983, I was subject to call all over the state of Alabama, and as you pointed out, I was down in Mobile for several months, on several different occasions. And I was in Birmingham on more than one occasion. And both as a circuit judge and a district judge. And I never was called to Montgomery for some reason. And, but I was in...
now, where were you living during this time?
At that point in time, I was living in Uri. After Lois died, your mother died in 1973, and I got married again in 1979, and from 1979 until January 81, until July 79, until January '81, at the 19th, when I retired. Why, I lived in Uri inasmuch as Mary Jane had a son, Eugene, who had not finished school. And I took a little bit of a chance to be living outside of my county, but I was on the tail end of my 4th term as a judge, and I knew I could retire, and I knew I could retire with retirement pay, a pension. And so I was living in Monroe County.
Now before that, from the time Mama died, 73, until you got married, you lived in Atmore.
Atmore.
And let's see, did you, what did you do? I mean, you got your clothes cleaned and you kept your dishes. Well, I just can't picture you. All that time was kind of like a fog to me, you know, after Mama died, and you were down there by yourself. We were living up here. And how did you, you never have been one real domestic type person. How did you carry on? You just had to, I know you didn't wash clothes. What did you, and I can't picture you washing.
I've always been one of those persons that made the best out of every situation that I ever found myself in. And it never occurred to me to live anywhere other than the house where you grew up in Atmore. I think we moved in 1951, and we built it. It was a GI house, and it's amazing the little amount that we paid for the lot and the house being built at about 4% interest. And so...
Do you remember how much it cost?
I remember it was $10,000.
And how much for the payments a month?
Now, I don't, as time went on, the payments increased, but it was never more than $40, $50, $60 a month.
And some months on back at it, that's pretty hard to come up with.
It's very hard to come up with, and I got behind at times, and those little generalities and technicalities didn't seem to bother me too much, and I would get caught up. But the law practice, it was something that you'd get some good fees, and good times were here, and you spent money. You always seem to have money in your pocket. Right now, I practice law, and I probably got $200 or $300 in my pocket in this bill, and I've always, you had more money when you practice law, but when you...
What was the biggest drain on that money, would you say? When you had a pocket full of money, what would you say would probably be the thing that...
Well, I know what you have reference to, that the biggest drain, I guess you would want have in mind would be you're coming up to the office and making certain demands. From that was real interesting. Of course, you've asked me one question, and I was about to get that, but let's answer this one that emerged while we were in the process of answering your other query. Namely, this drain. The drain, I had an office there on North Main Street, right downtown, across from the post office. And it had 3 rooms in it, and sometimes I had other lawyers 9/10 of the time while I practiced by myself. And if you walked into the office, there was the secretary, and to the left was my office. And I always had a lot of people waiting to talk to me, and I took my time. And a lot of times, my secretary, and I had several secretaries, but Miriam Milliken worked 16 years, the last 16 years. You probably remember her best. But when you first started coming to the office after school, regardless of whether I had clients or not, why, it was just understood that you could stick your head in the door and state your business, whatever you wanted, and at that point in time, you were doing business with two brothers that ran a little store kindred to a 10-cent store. I'm trying to, Tommy's store, right next to Bristow's store, and he sold a lot of items, cost 10, 15, 20, 25 cents, and as it developed, why, every afternoon you would pick up 10 or 15 cents to buy toys, more so, I think, than something to eat. Maybe you'd stop by the house and get a sugar buttered biscuit or something like that, or get you a biscuit and stick your finger in it and put a little syrup in it, and then come on down to the office. And I should interject right at this point that way of eating was not so much even during my time as my daddy's time, that sugar and butter biscuit, and I've seen a lot of kids that took their finger in a biscuit and poured a little syrup in it. Just before I'd give you 10 or 15 cents, you're just as happy as you can be. And then as you grew a little older, it seems like these things that you wanted to buy cost a quarter, 75 cents.
Started going to the movies, I think.
Started going to the movies. And I want to stop right here and say that if I was going to picture you night and day, you were the type of person that went to bed early, and in front of your bed was a television. And I don't remember you studying too much, and you studied some, I'm sure.
Not much.
Not much, but you lay up in bed in the semi-darkness and watch television. And
Had the television in my room.
in your room. And say, for instance, which was the case more often than not, we would, Lois and I go out and eat. And we eat a lot of time at Will Sharpless. We eat a lot of time at Sweet Shop. And as we would leave, we would ask you what you wanted. Eddie, what do you want to eat? He'd say, well, I'd like to have two, what do you call that? Veal cutlets, and I'd like to have some butter beans and sweet potatoes or other kind of potatoes, mashed, this and that. And one day, I never will forget, I pretended a lot of times in court to be more naive than when somebody would say, for instance, that dude, and I would turn around and say, now this Mr. Dude, who are they talking? Who is Mr. Dude? And then everybody, the district attorney, the lawyers and clients, and all explain to this old white-headed stuff. Now, dude is just, they just call people dudes, you know. And I said, well, I really appreciate knowing that. But anyway, you said you wanted a meat and two vegetables and maybe a dessert. And then you said, and a Playboy. Well, I didn't pay it in my mind too much attention at what it was that you wanted. And I probably wrote it down, Playboy. And I had never seen a Playboy. I didn't know what a Playboy was. And I'm sure Lee never had seen one up until this date. And of course, some maybe I'd heard that somewhere he stumbled, maybe walking down the road or out in the woods or tri-style or somewhere. He found a book kindred to a book.
Talking about that.
Yeah, that we call the Playboy. But anyway, when I asked Wheeler Crook to, I said, Wheeler, he said, what did you want to take home for to Eddie? And I said, well, he wants veal cutlets and so and Playboy. He said, a Playboy? And I said, yeah, that's what he said. I thought it was some kind of dessert, Lee. And so Wheeler said, well, you mean you're taking that to Lee and Eddie? And I said, yeah, well, yeah. And then he pulled this Playboy out, and I looked at it. I said, my goodness gracious alive, is this what this boy wants? But if he wanted, I just thought, well, just let him have it. Anybody that wanted to look at pages, you know, I've always, in reference to Playboy magazines and magazines of that sort, or these topless bars or these gaiety theaters, I've always made the statement, you're so close, but yet you're so far away. And in other words, the magazine is not the real thing. The real thing is the real thing. But I brought him his food, including his Playboy, back to it.
But what I was getting at, you know, talking about the money, well, I'm glad you brought that story in. But one time, Bob Tucker said to me, you know, I saw him on the street or something. He said, hey, Eddie, how you doing? Your daddy still making money and you spending it all? And that kind of hit home. And then it kind of came back to me of all the mornings I'd get up, you know, and go to school. And I felt welcome, you know, if you had a couple of $100, I'd just take a 20. But if you
take a 20?
If you had 100, you know, I'd feel like I shouldn't take but a 5 maybe. And of course, if you didn't have a 20, I might still take 5.
I must ask you. I feel called on. As Mussolini would say, it is my duty to ask you,
Yeah.
what in the world would you do with $20 out of my pocket?
Well, that was, you know, when I was dating and buying gas.
Oh,
you know, when I was in high school. And
now, at 16 or thereabouts, you had automobile expenses. You owned several automobiles, and at 15, as long as I was in the car, I believe our grandson here is 15, and I suppose, like you, Eddie, he drives with you.
he doesn't have his learner's permit because we've lost his birth certificate, and we've got to call Montgomery and get him one. And he is not, you know how I was just always wanting to drive?
Yeah.
He don't push it. He
don't push it.
He don't say too much about want, which worries me because he's not going to get a lot of practice with me in there, and then we just going to turn him loose when he's 16 without having had a lot of practice. So.
You go ahead and how's that, Lee?
Car.
You need a car?
He wants a car, but I'd rather he would do a lot of driving back down to Gulf Shores, and like I used to drive to Montgomery,
Yeah.
and get a lot of practice with somebody in there. And, well, that's something we've got to.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little more about just in a couple of minutes, because we've already down 1/3 of our battery. What you doing right now? You know, you're practicing law.
Well, let me just back up just a little bit. Hurriedly, let me say that after serving for other judges when they got sick or wanted to go on a visit, or went out to Reno, Nevada to the Judicial College where Mary Jane and I went in the fall of 1978. That was some nice trip. Why, after doing that for a while, I wasn't really making any money, but it did give me an opportunity to do my research on the two things that I was working on, and especially the Hugo Black thing. While I was in Birmingham, and I'd have to go to Montgomery and different places. Well, I was doing research all during that period, and I was interviewing people, and I was having a good time. So from January 81 until September 83, I interviewed federal judges, law clerks, Supreme Court law clerks, people that had known Hugo, and then at the same time I was working on the Indian research, the Creek Indian research, having to do with a case that I was associated with Claude Pepper for 16 years, and I interviewed Indians, the old Indians, and I found articles and went back and reviewed out of books and magazines and reviewed the case itself and made myself familiar with this 16-year-old legal story, which is a real story. How we started back in 1950 or 51.
We'll get that.
Okay, but you know, you have to, without going, I'm not going into any details on those things, but I am long-winded, but I'm not going to get started on a thing and dwell on it. But I'm just telling you, you want to know what I am doing right now. Well, from the time I retired, I just want to mention, leading up, because you can't understand what I'm doing right now unless you really understand what I did from the time I retired until now. And I'm not going into any details to amount to with that, because each of these facets, I could tell long stories for 3 hours. I could tell, for instance, from September 83 until December 84, I was the senior staff attorney for legal services in charge of Monroe, Clark, and Connecticut counties. And then from December 1984 until May 31st, 1985, I was still a senior staff attorney, but I was sent to Bruton inasmuch as Bruton had not been really worked on or by legal services in the sense that these poor counties had. And I was supposed to work with the judges and the client counsel and the lawyers to build up some relationship with legal services with the bar.
But you didn't like it. You didn't really enjoy your years with legal services. It's just sum that up. Why didn't you?
Well, since you want me to answer what I'm doing now, I'm going to follow. I'm not going to answer that directly, other than to say that I'm going to answer that like they used to ask Hugo, are you going to retire? And you'd say, I don't have any plans to retire, and I don't have any plans not to retire. I didn't particularly like legal services, but I didn't hate legal services. There are 2 or 3 things right now in my law practice that I picked up from legal service. And one of them is what is called an intake day. And so instead, I have, in the from 1948 to 1977 when I practiced law, and part of that time I was county judge, I never did have days set aside just to talk to people. Now I am in legal services. We have certain days just to talk to people. As a matter of fact, I only have one day a week, but I have 2 days a week. I talk to people on Tuesdays and Fridays. That is, my secretary sets up appointments on Tuesdays and Fridays now. And apart from that, I'm going to see some people at 10:30 Monday, and we're going to get them to endorse a $4,500 check. And I'm not going to have too much after the clients get their part, and another lawyer that was in the case before I was gets his part. We're going to put it in my trust fund. So legal services will go in. We do have that intake day. And then another thing that we had in legal services that I liked was case review. And so now some of the younger lawyers, we get together and we go over what we have, and we all talk about it, each case, and if we're not against each other. And that's a wonderful way to approach law. And what I have in mind, hopefully, is to have at least a lawyer or two. I've got 2 extra rooms in my office complex, and got tables in there, and desks in there, and chairs in there, 2 little offices where I've got my office, and then you come through the reception room where my secretary is, and then this space, and it's got carpet on the floor, and then to the left is 2 offices where 2 other lawyers could hold forth. What I really want to do is spend most of my time talking to clients and taking in the business and taking in the money and letting these younger boys do the work. And everybody has their own talent. So we've got down and we've covered briefly legal service. What I didn't like about legal services is that the people at the top was grading me, and the people at the bottom was grading me. And while I was making passing marks, and pretty good marks, I had been my own boss for 40 years, and I wasn't too happy working for someone. And the main dislike that I had with legal services was that they had their way of doing things, and I had been doing things my way for 40-odd years. And I always worked with my secretary to the extent that I called her in and could dictate, and I can write a letter and dictate best just having her in front of me. Their view was to put it on a tape, and then you don't see your secretary, and she sits out there, she's working, and then she takes the tape with that little machine and types out your letters. Well, naturally, anybody knows that does, the secretary is not wasting her time taking it down from me, but it's the way that a person works best. A secretary to me is more than just someone to take dictation. She does it all. I tell her what to do, how to do it, but I couldn't do that with legal services, and I thought since I was in charge of 3 offices that I ought to be able to do it as I pleased, but I found out that you had to follow these little rules and regulations. It was bureaucracy, and you had to have somebody that liked to write, and I didn't like to write, I don't like bureaucracy, And so to answer your question, no, I didn't particularly like legal services. That's the reason that I resigned. And there was another little period that I tried really to work here and there, and I really must confess that I did not find too many people anxious to use my services. I was going to work for much less than I was making in certain fields like alcohol, counselor, or this and that, and I never did push any of these employments. I did want to teach a class, and I am teaching a class in the Atmore Technical College. I am teaching state government, state and local government, a class that really gives me a chance to talk about the legislature where I experienced, county government where I had experienced, and all that. But then I decided, what in the world, since I am the big boy and have the big boy, why concern myself working with somebody else? Why don't, if you want to work, why don't you go back and be the big boy? And I don't like that phraseology, big boy, but what it, let me go back just a little bit. What I had in mind when I got out of law school was to come to Atmore and practice law for a little while, to find out that I could practice law, make a living practice law, to run for Congress. I didn't really have the ambition to be a senator, but I think deep down in the bottom of my nature that to be in Congress a little while, and that would give me a certain prestige to come back and practice law, and I guess sort of cash in on that, and it seemed to me a pretty good way of making money as a lawyer after you've been somebody, and rather than the traditional way of just day by day building up the law practice. Right or wrong, in light of certain developments, I found out it would be pretty hard to get elected during the 1960s to a state office. And I ran for delegate to the National Convention, and 8 people ran. I came in 5th, and until they found out I was Hugo's kinfolk, most of my friends that was in that race, who were higher placed than myself, had me running first. And I was running first because I was really out politicking. I was politicking same way I'm doing right today to build up a law practice. And but I found out that I'd better lower my sights, not lower my sights in a sense, but not try to run for Congress. I couldn't have got elected. We were going through some troublesome times, White Citizen Council and all that. And so what I did, though, was to run for the legislature, was to get involved as a judge. And so I feel like now to come back and practice law in Escambia County, that I have done just exactly what I set out to do, because I am so well known in the county that when the people heard that I had opened up an office, and I've done a lot to encourage them knowing that, when they heard that, why, they flocked to my office. Now, the first 4, 5, 6, 7 days, I wondered why I had opened up an office. But since then, then I haven't.
What do you mean by that?
Well, nobody came first 4, 5, 6 days. But then I got out And I wanted to see y'all. I wanted to come up here. I wanted to, I want to spend some time with Lee and Ashley as they are growing up. But I had opened up a law office the last of August, and I spent all of my Saturdays and Sundays just like I was politicking, just like I was running for office. And I went in, I am constantly, night and day, going into a, young fella, if you're not obligated anyway, I really appreciate you voting for me. That card's really important. You may need that card. Put it in the Bible and think of me. And for instance, example, they got a little old, barbecue place. I walked in there. I've been in there 2 times. And the 2 times that I went in there, as a result, I got a divorce from a black man that knew Lifeless Johnson, who was Ed Lee McMillan, the millionaire's chauffeur. I'm getting a divorce from him. There's another black fella came in there with his girlfriend, and he's charged with $4,000 back alimony. I'm handling his case, and the guy that runs the barbecue place, his wife, she had a child by another marriage, and I'm handling his adoption. So I have made it a point to go into all the business establishments, to go in especially places like the handicap, the junior food stores, the delis that Brother Dahl, your schoolmate, Darrell Dahl runs, and to meet all these women, these females that work there, and in the restaurants, and not only not only around Atmore. I go up to Bruton and East Bruton, and it is amazing the people that I meet, and it is amazing that when my secretary asked who recommended them to come to me, why, 9 times out of 10, it is somebody that I have been in touch with, passed out a card, talked to, or just they found out I was back. After being, about a week or 2 ago, I decided to announce in the Bruton paper and in the Flomaton paper and in the Atmore Advance just a simple announcement that I was practicing law and had set up law practice at, let's see what it says, 307 North Main Street, Atmore, Alabama. Then over here I have my mailing address, Post Office Box 739. And so when I moved into the office that the Atmore Journal operated out of their newspaper. That's where that newspaper was put together. And so when they moved out, they gave me a little boost to the extent that they were getting a new place to operate, and that Judge Rozelle, who was retired, was moving into that.
All right, we had to change batteries, so we took a break and we got some coffee, and we forgot what we were talking about before, and so we'll just start at a new place. Now what we've got to cover, we're halfway through for tonight.
Okay.
And I had 8 little niches to discuss, being what you're doing today, your retirement, We got those 2 covered. Okay, we got 6 more we haven't covered.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start off. If you went and asked 100 people in Escambia County, said, now, tell me about Hugh Rozelle. What does he do? What's Hugh Rozelle, you know? Don't you think that 90 of them would say, oh, you mean the judge, Judge Rozelle? Most people think of you not as a lawyer, and most of them don't. A lot of them don't remember that you were in the House of Representatives or anything, but most of them would probably say that they remember you as the judge, the judge. Let's talk about when you first got elected. And
well, you want me to talk about that phase of my monocle, or when I got elected, or first let me say that a person mentioned the other day, Ashley, says, when you say the judge, everybody knows that you're talking about Judge Rozelle, even though there's Judge Kirkland and Judge Webb and Judge Batson and Judge Price and Judge Elliott, but for some reason, and this has been put about by other people, they have made this same reference and remark, namely that when people refer to the judge, that they mean Judge Rozelle. I hope that's not too much of a personal reference or egotistical, but now I'm called several things by several people. Some of the people out in the country still call me Mr. Hugh. And Mr. Hugh to me is a monocle. Is that the right word, Eddie? Monocle?
sounds right.
That name to me shows a lot of respect, and I really appreciate it. But a lot of the black people call me Louis Rochelle. And there's a few people that still call me lawyer, because after all, I practiced law from 1948 to 1947. Now from 1945 to 1977, did I say I practiced law from 1948 to 1977?
You did this time.
Okay, and irregardless of what I said the other time, that is true. And then from 1965 until 1977, I was a county judge. And then in 1977, I had to make up my mind whether I wanted to be a full-time district judge or a full-time lawyer, because the legislature had passed the judicial article, and the judicial article intent was to make uniform the county judicial system, whereby each county would have the same jurisdiction. Hitherto, one county might be called the inferior court, as the Escambia County's county court was called. One county over in Tuscaloosa, they call it the county court. In Covington County, they call it the intermediary court. In Mobile, they call it the court of misdemeanors and common pleas, or in some jurisdiction, the common pleas court. And in the Constitution, it says we'll have one superior court, and all the rest of them are inferior court. Now, at any time, I could have gone to my legislator, and in 3 days, he could have change that, as Judge Mayfield from Tuscaloosa suggested that I do, to change the name of inferior court as it was known in Escambia County up until 1977 to county court. Judge Mayfield was an alcoholic, a recovered alcoholic. He was part and parcel of the AA endeavor, and he believed in it so strongly, I suspect that he paid more attention to that phase of his court than any other phase, and he let a lot of people off without paying fines if they recovered from drinking monkey juice, and so a certain element in Tuscaloosa County defeated him simply because he wasn't collecting the fines that he should collect. But I never chose to have it changed. That is not what we're talking about. But what we're talking about is, the point I want to get across is that in 1977, when the judicial articles went in effect, that revolutionized the court in Alabama and made the Alabama system #1 under Howell Heflin, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Alabama at that time, and presently the United States Senator, senior senator from Alabama. So it was great strides, and so that we were making in the judicial system. But at first blush, I knew that as a lawyer, I could make more than as a judge. I think it was supposed to pay around $25,000 a year. But I was on my either third or fourth term. I think I was on my fourth term. It's an elective thing, and so the people had seen fit to let me stay there, and had not defeated me, and but I decided that I just practiced law.
Okay. Now, the first time you ran, who ran against you?
First time I ran, I never had run but one time. In 1964, Roy Stokes, an attorney by the name of Roy Stokes, had been the judge for 7 years. He had been, the judge before him was Brooks Jones, and the judge before Brooks Jones was Lee Ott. Way back there in 1951, Escambia County created the inferior court. So we'd have a court in Atmore with the same, in the same sense, and with the same court in Atmore that they had in Bruton. So the people from Atmore wouldn't have to go to Bruton. After all, the people in Atmore vote about as many votes as they do in Bruton and East Bruton put together. And East Bruton is just across Murder Creek from Bruton and is a municipality. And incidentally, they got the nicest courtroom of any in the county, because they got a new city hall, and they Tut Edwards was the mayor, and Tut and I became great friends. And so I held court there, and up in the top, the sky came through. You could almost get a suntan. It was that modern. They had a beautiful courtroom. So anyway, when the inferior court was created, everybody got behind, the lawyers got behind Lee Ott. Lee Ott has had a lot of jobs. He's never been able to win any, but he always got appointed to everything that came up. He's now the county attorney by appointment. Not to criticize him, but he got appointed, and at the behest of the lawyers in the main. And then Brooks Jones, the son of Johnny Jones, the president of First National Bank of Atmore, now deceased, Johnny, his son, Brooks Jones, ran against Lee Ott. Lee Ott had been in the county about as long as myself, and not too long, and so Brooks was from an old family there, and through mostly the efforts of his father, while he was elected, and then Brooks decided to study more, go off to school, went to Columbia or somewhere like that, went down to Florida, ran for circuit judge, he got defeated, but anyway, that left a vacancy, and Roy Stokes got the appointment, and then nobody ran against him. He must have served 3 years, and then nobody ran against him, so he served 4 more, and by that time, I guess a lot of people wanted to get rid of it, and a lot of people felt like he was young, you couldn't tell him anything, and these are his words, and nobody could tell him anything, and he was real tough, and it was like a court-martial. Very few people was found not guilty. So in the beginning, people like Brooks Garrett and Judge Elliott wanted me to run simply because Roy was taking a part in Judge Elliott's race. Judge Elliott was up against, let's see, Doug Webb. Well, I wasn't involved in that race, but since Roy was out to stay in as a judge and not have any opposition, he was out to beat Judge Elliott, and so Brooks Garrett and the old judge wanted to pull me in and said I could beat him. And I've been in the legislature, and I've been out about a year, I believe. We may have to correct that, but I had made up my mind to be out of politics, to stay out of politics. As a matter of fact, Lois didn't want me in politics, and Eddie didn't want me in politics, and so I wasn't too keen to get back in. I wanted to build up my law practice, and I remember the last night that you could qualify, while there's a lot of people over at the house, and Lois nor Eddie had agreed for me to run. And Doug Chapman was there with his pickup truck with $100 qualifying fee, and they kept, well, I never would have run except a lot of little people, apart from these big people, started calling me. And so being a little bit learned in politics, having been a state representative, why, I knew that if you announce too soon, Ashley, and I hate to see you leave me, that as long as you just stay out there on a limb, well, a lot of your friends will urge you, and you will build up a sort of a momentum, as it was. And so, from the time that these people of high authority wanted me to run, up until the last day, a lot of little people was want me to run. I said, well, will you support me? Yeah, and we'll work for you, and this and that. So I did a lot of good politicking before I made up my mind, and I would not have run if Lois hadn't agreed. And Lois didn't agree until about 10, 11 o'clock that night, and I was sitting over in my old chair, and I think you came over there, as I recall, and you said at that time that if I wanted to run, to go ahead and run, and that you would help me. And whereupon Doug Troutman said, if you're going to run, we better hop in this pickup truck and get on up there to Bruce. this fellow Mandel, Leon Mandel, was chairman of the Democratic Executive Committee. And so when we got there, it was almost 12 o'clock. And I must say that several members of the Democratic Executive Committee had a sort of a high-heel party. And there was a lot of steak bones and a lot of bottles, soft drink bottles and otherwise scattered around. And one of them said, "You want to run? You waited pretty late, hadn't you?" And no, it's not 12 o'clock, Judge Troutman said. And so, in the meantime, they tell me that Roy Stokes was keeping tabs on me because it had been put about that I was going to run. And so he was pretty well disturbed the next day that right at the last moment that I had decided to run. And it was pretty much a tough battle, but I always was on the offensive. I wrote most all the lawyers. I don't know, most all of them wanted me to run. And it was agreed that I wouldn't have to pay for any newspaper advertisement, that I wouldn't have to pay for any radio advertisement. And I wrote all of my newspaper advertisements, and we had political rallies, and we would speak at different schools and places. And most people running for office give the same speech. Well, there's so many people, candidates, if you could win them over, you'd have a pretty good political base. And I always made a different speech. I came out with something new every time, and I don't know of any other candidate, including my opponent, they always said about the same thing. But my opponent's brother-in-law, he put it about town that, well, I spent the night, I was working night and day that last month. In the beginning, Lois said that I could run, but I could only work on Thursday afternoon and over the weekend. Otherwise, stay in my office and make you a living. You and Lois a living. But it got so hot during that last month, she turned me loose. Buford Wiggins gave me an old car. Doug Troutman gave me a credit card. And I had my own shoe leather. And with that car and with that free advertisement that I could do, and so I made it. I think I spent around $600. Most people probably spend several $1,000s running for an office like that.
Well, you talk like during that time we were kind of getting over kind of a tough time. You were fighting back, weren't you? Kind of getting back over.
Yes. I'd been in the legislature, and there was a short period. I have had periods where I drank too much, and right at the tail end of my legislative career, why I drank too much, and so I was just starting to build up my law practice, and so in 1963, I had to start from scratch, you might say, building up my law practice. First 2 or 3, well, I think the first 2 or 3 months, I sat in my office and hardly any people came in. And then one day I got in my cars and I started covering the whole county. And instead of 3 and 4 people coming in a day, you would find 9, 10, 11, 12, then you'd have 20. And so by the time that it was time to run for this judgeship, I had built up my law practice, but I had just started making money. Everything looked good again for me. I wasn't drinking monkey juice, and but I got accused because I went through a little period where I did drink it. I went through about 3 periods, and the funny thing about my drinking, I have physical examinations now, and I always come out smelling like a rose, no damage to my liver, and thinking backwards, those periods were nothing to brag about. They're pretty rough, but actually, when I did drink, the period was so short compared with the average person that's drinking. They were long enough, but they were short enough not to damage my health, because not many people 70 years old have the vim and vigor and can exercise and drive the car at night and leave Birmingham during a storm. I was up in Birmingham not too long ago, and it was at night, and it was storming. I said, "Sister, I've got to leave." And she said, "Surely you're not going to, you mean you're going to drive at night?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." "And you're going to leave in this storm?" And she said, and I said, "Yeah, I get to leave. It's not really storming." It was pretty bad, because after I got about 2 miles, why, I pulled on the side off and let it rain a little while till I could see a little bit better. But I never will forget, it was, made me laugh, it made me giggle. She said, "Oh, I forgot, you drive at night and you don't pay too much attention to the weather at night." And which is the truth. And so that, if that is the explanation that you were seeking, I had some handicap, and enough handicap for my opponent's brother-in-law to put it about Flumerton, that I was staying at the Flumerton Motel, Mrs. Mims Motel, walling around with a woman drunk. Well, fortunately, they didn't have, what I was doing, I was working so hard, I was working at night. And I knew more how to politic, having been in the legislature, than my opponent. And I would go to the train station, I'd go to the bus station. And there's an amazing number of people that operate at night that don't operate during the day. And I had a chance to be along. Lois had my telephone number, and anybody that wanted to talk to me, she would let them call, but not every Tom, Dick, and Harry, because I wanted to write my speeches and write my newspaper advertisements. And I just went up there a few times, but as soon as that backfired, because as soon as Mrs. Mims said that what my opponent's brother-in-law was saying, she says he not only stole my help, but he is going around making my hotel sound like an awful place. And that fine Mr. Rozelle, we don't have telephones in his room or any of the other rooms. And I see him on an average of every 15 to 20 minutes every night that he's here, and he's answering the telephone, and he certainly don't have a woman in there, and he certainly don't, and I don't appreciate this fellow Broom putting this information about that I run a place where a person can live there and wallow with a woman and drink whiskey. So that sort of backfired. But Roy had another thing going for him that didn't backfire, that was pretty deadly. He had the sister. Now, you take a person, if you want to help somebody, you don't do a lot of bad mouthing. You operate pretty much like Dennis James from No Comas, who now has a Lincoln Continental, in as much as he has a pretty big interest in the second biggest oil well in Alabama, which is located at No Comas. It's rated number 2. I didn't dream that Dennis would buy a new, I believe he did that on the spur of the moment because he's not the kind of fellow that splurges, but in the end he bought him a Lincoln Continental, and he knows more oil. He knows oil like Alan Moore, the man where the first oil well coming in Escambia County was found. Alan knew oil and Dennis knew oil, and they could talk oil to people, non-professional people, and they would understand what he was talking about. And so actually what I'm explaining is my candidacy for the judgeship, and in the end I remember there's always several interesting episodes that happen. I had made a sort of an enemy out of a guy from Flomaton, the mayor. And if the Finleys are for you in Flomaton, you get 51% of the vote, and if they're against you and the people know it, you'll get 49% of the vote. But I canvassed up there just as hard as I could, and I did get about 49% of the vote, but I spoke at the McCall School, and Charlotte and Olive, Charlotte, my sister-in-law Charlotte, and her friend, the school teacher, Olive Pate, their students had painted a picture of me with a cigar in my mouth, and to make me look natural, and they put it on the front of my car, which was parked at my door, that Buick, I think. And as the people come out, they could see Rozelle for judge. And old Finley and another guy came out, and Finley said, "That's a lost cause." And that made Charlotte and Olive so mad that everywhere they saw him after that. But after I got elected, the brethren that had made that statement got a DUI ticket, and he called me up, and he said that he knew that there had been a little difference between us. And I said, yeah. I said, you said you wanted to enlarge the city limits of Pollard and take in a cemetery, and you said you would, instead of the legislative reference writing up the bill, that you and your brothers would write it up. Instead of putting it in the Bruton paper, you put it in the Atmore, and of course it should have been in the Bruton paper because it concerned the people up there more than did Atmore. And you are right, I didn't introduce the bill, and because I don't think you did right. And he said, what I am talking about is that I have a DUI ticket. And I said, Kurt, I would feel hurt if you did, had you failed to call on me. And let's get together if there's anything that I could do. And back in those days, it was a little different now. A judge had a little more leeway but since we have court management and since the laws have been changed, if you get a ticket number one, certain things happen. No, you get 2 tickets, certain things happen. 3, you're sort of out. Well, ever since then, me and Kurt Finley has been friends this past week. He's always to be found. He's got a lot of money now. They've always had money, but they've got a lot of oil on their land.
Let's just pause and ask you a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there were 3 wells on some of the property that they were either fixing to drill or had drilled and everything.
Yeah.
Can you give me an update? Are they still drilling? Or are they going to drill?
I think the update is those are wells that are in existence. Those 2 that you have reference to are in existence right now. But they are drilling another one that I think it has come in out there toward Little Rock. And now let's, I can to bring you up to date.
Okay, I was just, that went through my mind. All right, let me ask you this question, just get back on this. And I've got an answer in mind. If you thought back over your years as a judge, what do you think would be your most important contribution, a change you made, or something that you did that might have affected more? You were talking about the old judge from Tuscaloosa a while ago. See if you think about the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll have to take a break while we get our other tape recorder fixed. We had to take a little pause there, and I had asked you, what do you think? Well, really, I'm putting words in your mouth. What I'm trying to get at is that while you were judge, you and, as I understand it, you straightened it up, that if a poor fella, got a drinking problem, and he gets caught, they take his license away. A lot of times he loses his job. He keeps on drinking, and he doesn't make any progress, and instead of helping him, it's more or less compounding his problem. And I had understood that you were kind of one of the pioneers in a new approach to taking care of, I guess they've gotten away from that now, but a new approach to solving a man's problems when he gets a DWI. You know what? Straighten that up. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, you were talking about my judicial career, and you were making reference to my contribution or participation regarding the DUI offenders. They used to be called DWI defenders. And I think you have reference to a picture of me with certain leaders in the DUI school program. And I'm listed there with one of the old DUI teachers. And I made the principal talk at the Best Western Motel, and you had people from Montgomery down there. The DUI program is still in existence, and it was in existence back, it came into existence when I was a judge, but you didn't have all judges that were interested or had any desire to participate in it. And this article said, and it is true, that I was the first judge in Southwest Alabama to send DUI offenders to the DUI school. Before they had a DUI school, there were certain people in connection with AA that wanted to come to court and wanted to help those people that had DUI records, that had had an offense lodged against them for DUI. And so I started working with these people, and then just as soon as the program went into effect, where court management decided that it was a problem, that finding these people and taking their license wasn't the complete answer, that these people might be helped. And so these people connected, like Mr. Chapman in Evergreen and Mr. Pipkin in Atmore and others, and I may say that they were all old ex-drunks. And as a matter of fact, one judge wanted to replace one of the teachers with a former president of the junior college in Monroe. And Colonel Simpson, who was in charge of the Montgomery program, talked to me about it and says, how do you feel about getting rid of old so-and-so and putting the former president of the college in? And I said, I don't like it worth a darn. And I said, now, so far as the president of the college is concerned, he's one of the finest citizens in Monroe County. But in my view, you got to walk the walk before you can talk the talk. And I suspect that that fella's never had a drink in his life, and how do you expect him to relate and do any good in a DUI school when he's had no practical experience? I want the kind of people that we have. And we had one that slipped once or twice, and to heck with it. I still wanted him, and if either one of them, or some of the others that never had a drink, I'm the first one that they would tell about. And so, as a consequence of why I was known in the judicial circles as being a pioneer in going beyond just a fine and a punishment or losing their license. Sometimes they were fined, and I tried to, when you take a fellow's license, why you take the livelihood mainly from his wife and children. He can't get back and forth to his work. And I tried to save as many licenses as I could if it's a two-edged sword. When you got people like Alan Moore, whose son got killed by a drunk driver, you can imagine how he feels, as close as I was to Alan Moore. I didn't want some darn fool out there driving that was going to kill somebody, and yet it's pretty hard to hit a happy medium. We were trying to help them. What we were trying to do was to get them off of the monkey juice. And for that reason, right today, as soon as I started practicing law, I went to a judge's meeting, and I got appointed to the alcohol and drug abuse program in the Alabama State Bar. And there's several of us members, and I went to Montgomery 3 or 4 weeks ago and met at the lawyer's building right near the Supreme Court building, where we had a meeting, and we're going to have another meeting this month. And so I am still working, trying to help in that regard. As a matter of fact, there's a lawyer from a town near Atmore that's been drinking and drinking heavily, and he's a smart lawyer, and even during this period while his partner, he's not really a partner because he hadn't passed the bar, but he's going to take the bar exam in February, but he's smarter than half of the lawyers that I know. And there was a dentist in this town that got drunk and got a file of the government and taxes and everything else, and they sent him off, got him in a car and took him to a place called, I think it's Brookhaven, and it cost anywhere from $7,000 to $3,000, but you don't have to pay anything to get in, and you don't have to pay anything to get out, but you're supposed to pay after you are rehabilitated. And so this doctor, this dentist, went through it, and so thus it was about 2 Fridays ago, I did take time from my busy schedule. You ever have anybody to introduce you when you're making a speech, and after you get through, we want to thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule. But anyway, that's always funny to me. That's overdone, probably. But anyway, me and that dentist and that young lawyer, we got this fella in Brookhaven, and he's been in about a week, and the young lawyer is going to see him this weekend, and next weekend he and his wife are coming down there to Gus Shores. That's what I was talking to you on the telephone. I wanted to see, we wanted to come up here, but I told that lawyer that he could make up his mind, he and his wife, whether they could come to see us on Fort Morgan Road at Mary Jane's Cottage, either this weekend or next weekend. And so next week they're coming. So, see, I'm still working. Now that is outside, I don't know where this program that the bar is featured, where it will lead to, but there is a judge from Ozark by the name of Val McGee that is taking a real interest. And the way he talks, he never had any kind of drinking problem. And as I said at the meeting, the last one that I attended, that none of these people were talking too much about their problem, and I was wondering if anybody had any problem like I'd had at one time, and because I don't have much confidence, I didn't say that, and I put it in such a way. It came, I missed the first meeting, so I thought I opened up and told them why I was interested in it. And then Judge McGee, I don't know whether Judge McGee wants to use this. I know I'm on an interview and going out to the public. I'm not for sure. I'm sure that he wants to do some good. I wonder what depth that his experience in the matter is to make him effective. I think you have to, by way of repetition, like this guy said in a newspaper article, that, well, he brought my name in it. He said I sent him over to Searcy Hospital, which I did, because it was the only program that they had, because he was a con man, and he admitted in that article how much he hated me, and that now that I was the best friend that he ever had, etc. So I'd helped that guy, and it had a picture of him behind the bars. I might have showed it to you. Behind the bars, the prison bars in Atmore. But happily, he is able now to go behind the bars and talk to the inmates there on drinking, and then after he gets through talking, he can remove himself from the premises. I ran into him between Bruton and Monroeville at a service station that I frequently stop. I was about to add at, but you don't end a sentence in that word at.
Okay. All right, let's get off of that part of your years on the bench. Is that what you're supposed to?
Yeah.
Okay, can you think of any other broad thing that you were really interested in? Any other themes of your...
Oh, I think without a doubt, you see, the district court is like a three-legged stool. It's juvenile, it's misdemeanors, and it's civil cases. And the jurisdiction of civil cases up to $5,000, and misdemeanors, well, you've got hundreds of misdemeanors where you have a dozen felonies. So it is the court that more people in your county come in contact with. Now the civil side, up to 5,000, it has concurrent jurisdiction with the circuit court. So as a lawyer, you can choose whether you want to come into the district court or the circuit court, and there's advantages on either court. In addition, we have the small claims court. A lot of people said, my goodness, that is something to have to listen to those people. They're not lawyers. They come in there. But I found that part to be real interesting, because everybody that tries his own case in the main thinks he's a person mason, Is it Percy Mason?
Perry.
Perry Mason. But to answer your question, without a doubt, the juvenile court to me was my main interest, and when I ended up my career and they passed resolutions by the lawyers and by the, incidentally, the state legislature of Alabama passed a resolution in my honor, since we're bringing it all out, and mainly, I guess, for grandchildren, and both the legislature, and of course it was humans that wrote the resolution that knew me, and it was lawyers that knew me that wrote the resolution passed by the Escambia County Bar Association. They said that my main and abiding interest was in the juvenile field. And for instance, the Galt case passed by the Supreme Court of the United States revolutionized the way that you tried juvenile cases. In the old days, and even after the Galt case, you might have a judge that would bring the parent and the district attorney in his office, and the poor little old juvenile sitting in a chair outside the judge's office, and they get in there and decide his fate, whether to send him to the industrial school or whatever. But the Galt case stated that a juvenile case had to be tried and transcribed, that you had to have a court reporter or a record made. And so I always had a court reporter in there, and I noticed now the judge, the court reporter that used to report to me, she's still there, but they got a machine, and still it all goes on that machine, so if it is appealed, that you got a record to appeal on. And so it's got to that part, that is a burden that you have to meet in order to make a case legal, and a juvenile has to be represented by counsel, must be a lawyer appointed. And incidentally, it might interest you that here I am, I sat up there for 16 years in that black robe, and now this young judge that is a juvenile judge, I get these telephone calls and say, Judge, can you come up here and represent these juveniles? Or can you come up and represent the mothers? And you don't have much notice, but you go running on up there, and you don't have any preparation hardly, but you get $20 an hour while you're consulting with clients, and $40 an hour while you're actually in court. Now, some of the misdemeanor cases, I think, I would say the juvenile part was that which interested me, and I started adhering to the Galt case. It's like the Miranda case in dealing with criminals in the circuit court. They're entitled to certain rights as under the Bill of Rights. Well, this Galt case is where they've been picking up kids and haphazardly dealing with them without any regard to really law or procedure. And the public can't come in when you try a juvenile case. Now, a lot of these civil cases and criminal cases are real funny. You get it, people make statements that you will, now this wasn't made in any case that I tried, it was made while I was trying a case one day. I had a witness on the stand, and I was popping questions to him, and he was getting pretty sweaty, and he wasn't enjoying it, and I was shaking some hair in front of him that he pulled out of his the head of his wife. If my client was correct, but it sure did feel like new hair to me, but I had it right in his face, and he says, if I ever get off this greasy pole, I'm going to sand the next one. an old Judge Hare, that was way back in the early years of my practice. He was smoking a cigarette. You know, judges, if they smoke cigarettes, everybody can smoke cigarettes. If they don't smoke cigarettes, generally the rule is not to smoke cigarettes. But he liked the cigarette almost dropped out of his mouth, and everybody in the courtroom started laughing. The judge wanted to know what he said, and he turned around and he said, "Well, sir," I said, "if I ever get off this greasy pole, I'm going to stand the next one." And so that, incidentally, that particular black fella became my client. I was so rough on him that later on he was my client.
You're talking about smoking. You didn't ever have any bad experiences smoking in the courtroom, did you?
Well, when I went down to Bay Minette, a fellow cook that I knew, Walter Cook, whom I knew in Washington, who got to be a real, very capable lawyer. He's retired. He came from Selma. I knew him in Washington. We studied for the bar together. And one of the first cases he got was in Bay Minette, and me from Atmore, he called on me to come down and help him try the case. And as mentioned, I'm judge with old Judge Francis Harris, and he always sat up there with a cigarette in his mouth, and we smoked cigarettes, and I walked in the courtroom puffing on a cigarette, and I was sitting there, and Telfair Massman, the judge, he just threw his finger at me and said, "Get that cigarette out of your mouth." And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." So that was the reason I said that if the judge smoked, everybody smoked. The judge didn't smoke, they don't smoke. But nowadays, a lot has changed, especially since we've had court management. At first, everybody thought court management was something where a bunch of bureaucrats going to tell judges what they can do and what they can't do. And some judges feel that sometimes they overstep the bounds, but I just always found them healthy. But we generally have rugs or carpet on the floor, and it's understood that very seldom you see a lawyer light up, because I've seen a few light up, drop the darn lighted cigarette, do that in the, and that's in the rug, the carpet, and that's pretty bad. So that's been done away with by and large.
Okay, well, let's go on now. Let's talk a little bit about when you were in the legislature, and I want to dwell a little bit. A lot of people, you know, they tell stories about you politicking, you know, and I think... Okay, I believe this is working. We had a little audio-visual trouble. The machine just turned off. And so we took a break. I believe it's running again. Let me check one more. But weren't we talking about, we're getting off, we're going backwards, and we just left your days on the bench, and we're going to talk about a few minutes. We're going to have to speed it up. We're going to talk a few minutes about your legislative days, and what I was going to talk, we talk about politics a little bit. Politicking, which everybody always... Okay, I don't know if the battery's just weak, or maybe that battery wasn't charged up, but I'm afraid this is not going to be an hour and a half, so we'll... Okay, let's try one more time. We were talking about you kind of being known as a politician, and I always heard about that you maybe attended probably more funerals than if you were going to funerals of your very closest friends. Well, it just put about that you went to more funerals than your share. Now, what do you have to say about that? Do you have any comments?
No, I didn't go to more funerals than my share. I think that that's sort of an exaggeration that you heard one fellow that maybe said that I showed up at a funeral involving some of his kinfolks, and he took the view that I was there to politic rather than to mourn his kinsman, and that is just one person's view. If I'll say this, if there's ever a time that people appreciate their friends or acquaintances, is when there is a funeral and there is a death, and I knew everybody in the county, and if I went to a funeral, well, I knew those people. I never went to a funeral if by chance I didn't know the person, but it was just natural that if you was an official, if you represented the whole county in the state legislature and somebody died, it would be unbecoming indeed for you just to ignore the death of that person. You'd go to this funeral and that funeral and not go to all of them that you could. As a matter of fact, let me add this. I always like to go to a funeral where only a handful showed up.
Well, who usually, like if you were going to a funeral or get a little more serious, probably a lot more singing. That was really good. Who usually went with you?
I was master of ceremonies pretty much on all the gospel singing just about in Escambia County and even down in northwest Florida. And Robert Gordon Jr. and Dee Gibbs and Jim Gleason and Alvin Slay. It was just a few of the people that made it a habit. Gene Godwin, and going to these different singings.
And you were really known at one time for years and years as really putting on a good singing. And I think you kind of brought applause to the...
Yeah, the whole idea when you have a singing group up there, and you were on the stage, and you and Lois gave me a mandolin, and I took that mandolin around, towed it, but I never played it because I didn't know anything about music, and I certainly didn't know anything about mandolin, the mandolin. And one time somebody asked me, "Now when are you going to play, Judge?" And I said, "Well, later on." And then at last I confessed that I was had an instructor, and he had asked me to get used to the instrument, and I felt like the best way to get used to the instrument would be to just carry it around in my hand. But if you holding a singing, I'll say this, that when I stopped being master of ceremonies, that singing folded up in Escambia County. And to have a singing, I used much labor as required. And with my secretary, I had a list of all the singing groups. I wrote to all the singing groups. I wrote to all the people that ordinarily went to a singing. And the last singing that we had singings at Zion Hill up there north of Bruton, and we'd fill up the church. And the last one we held there, since we fill up the church, we started holding them at the North Bruton School. We still had people sitting in the windows and almost falling out of the windows, so many would come. And I would get behind the singers and come out and like this, and nobody could see that was singing. Then all of a sudden everybody would clap, and you had to do that. You had to talk, get the people in the right mood and the right frame of mind. And the more they clapped and the more they were encouraged, the better they would sing. And so you can't fake dealing with people. If you like people, you can get along with people, and you can politic with people. One candidate, Bigfoot's down there in Atmore, what is his name, Honoree Owen, said that I was the only politician that could go and politic at a church, and get by with it. But I never went to any church where I wasn't invited. I was just invited to every church in Escambia County, and I didn't know anything about any religion or denomination other than Methodist and Baptist until I started getting those invites. And so pretty soon I knew Holiness, Church of God, Church of Christ, Reorganized Church of Latter-day Saints, etc. Knew them all, and I felt at home in all of them.
Well, you spent a lot of times in churches, and something that's always been real embarrassing for me is I know you'd stay up, you know, pretty late at night with a singing, and this is just this horrible story I heard. It's very embarrassing about you one Sunday. You'd been up late at a singing the night before, and you went to this church where you were Robert Gordon Jr.
Yeah, Robert Gordon Jr. My two of my diplomatic friends, D. Gibbs, the biggest oil dealer in southwest Alabama, as he described himself, and in a sort of joking way, and young Gordon, he just loved people and knew people and prided themselves in knowing more about people than they knew about themselves. D. Gibbs said that he and Robert Jr. and I went to a little church in the eastern end of the county where we wasn't known quite as well, and that we were sitting there, and as usual, and he embellished the story by saying that whenever the preacher got to preaching on hellfire and brimstone, that I was inclined to fall asleep, and on this particular occasion that I got to snoring to the extent that it was embarrassing he and young Robert. And at last he said that in order to quiet me down, that he took his elbow and punched me and said, Judge, the preacher has called on you to say the benediction. And he said that I got up and folded my hands and thus wise, and that I started off with the benediction and the prayer, and it was such a beautiful thing that the church top just went like that, and the preacher pulled his watch out of his watch pocket and looked at it, and he said, well, he wasn't exactly through with his sermon, but that he guess he had preached a little overtime, and since the benediction had already been said, that with that dismissed. And
okay, I think it's working. I believe our batteries are about to go down. But didn't that story get into a Robert Gordon Jr. later on was kind of editor of a forestry magazine, and didn't he put that article in the magazine?
Absolutely, and Dee told the story, and Robert told it, and Robert was able to add a little more to it, and embellished it, and made it such a wonderful story, and this is November the 2nd.
3rd.
Is it the 3rd?
Yeah.
November the 3rd. I'm going to have to change these tapes. Coming up from Atmore to Hackett Creek, I'd certainly not given this matter any thought as to what I was going to say. As a matter of fact, did you say that we were going to tape this when I got up here on the telephone?
Well, I had mentioned that I was going to try to get one. I didn't know if you knew what one was or not.
Well, in any event, I gave no thought whatsoever to it, and when we were here last night or yesterday afternoon, you seemed to have it somewhat organized on paper, and your main theme, thrust, technique, what have you, seemed to be to start more or less what I'm doing right now and go on back through my life, and then thereafter to talk about our relatives, our forebears, and our brothers and sisters, and then go on further back than that. And I was following that line pretty well. I did it from time to time, digress a little bit, and you pulled me back. And I'm not for sure where we are, but we seem here at Hatchet Creek to go to sleep earlier, get up earlier. Seems that time is slower here. And some of the things that occurred to me after I woke up this morning and after Mary Jane brought my first cup of coffee was something about the way I got started practicing law, and the way that I got started in politics. And so I had wanted Eddie to be in here so he would know what I'm talking about. And he is back in here, and Ashley's back in here, and I'm glad to see you, Ashley. For instance, I'd just like to say that going back to my law practice, in 1948 I came to Atmore, and from 48 until, say, 51 or 52, I wasn't involved in politics at all. I didn't make any talks in the community. I was trying cases, going through the different types of litigation, like trying a robbery case, appearing before the State Board of Education, trying damage suits, filing divorces, doing a deed, doing a mortgage, doing a promissory note, doing things that I knew nothing about. You don't learn those things in law school. And that got me up till about 52. I knew where I first, if I was going to run for office, and big office, make no mistake, I never did think I would start with the state legislature. I had my sights higher than that. 1952 is a year that oil had been discovered in Escambia County, and I made a little money on oil that year, and seemed like I was getting my feet more on solid ground. But I didn't know, but it wasn't until way later on, especially in the 60s and 70s, that I made considerable money in personal injury suits where I'd have fees of $3,000, $10,000, and $15,000 in one lawsuit. So in 1953, I think of that year as a preparation year. I diverted myself somewhat from the law. I was working at that just as hard as ever, but I hadn't got over these initial attempts at trying cases and preparing documents and papers. And in 53, I started going over the old second congressional district, which is not the district as we know it today. Back in those days, the district was from Escambia, well, from Baldwin County to Montgomery. And now we hooked up from Mobile upward, and they've changed the district altogether as required by the government. So 53, as I say, was a period of preparation. Up until that time, I had not participated in any civic activity. I had never joined any club. I had a horror of making any kind of speech in public. I found that I could get up and do my job. That is, the job that made my living. But for me to get up before the Kiwanis Club, like people do, and make a talk, that was the horror of horrors. I just had no idea that I was determined. Make no mistake, I was determined to do that, because I'd already had the resolve that whatever you feared to do, you should do it. And I was determined to do it. And I was invited to join the Rotary Club, and that was a step in the right direction, because the Rotary Club in Atmore was rather exclusive. You just have one person from each profession. In Bruton and these other towns, they sometimes had 4 or 5 lawyers and 4 or 5 doctors, but in Atmore we had 1 doctor and 1 lawyer. But the way they'd get around that in Bruton would be 1 judiciary, 1 judge, 1 lawyer that involved himself with criminal cases, 1 who was a probate lawyer, another one known for some other phase of law. And so in Bruton, it was more, I like Bruton, I love Bruton just as much as I do Atmore, but the Rotary Club was made up chiefly of doctors and lawyers and the old families at T.R. Miller. So no sooner had I joined the Rotary Club till old preacher Merkel, who was the Episcopal preacher, he said that they would like to have me to make a talk. And that is the thing that I had been dreading all along, is to get up and make a talk. And can you imagine? I believe that the first day I attended, I had to make this talk. But in any event, I did have several days, or maybe a week or 2 of preparation. So it must have not been the first day that I attended. And they even told me what they wanted me to talk about. It was some catchy phrase. What do you want me to do? In a well. And I knew my subject matter. I knew what I wanted to say. But the very fact that I had to stand up before a group and have somebody to introduce me, and then there all of these townspeople, the cream of the crop, sitting there to listen to the young lawyer, as it were, and to make his maiden speech in the town. Why, it was some dread and some apprehension, and I really believe that I some way, in some manner, psyched myself up, because it was sort of like going before a jury. I had been before a jury, but that was the way I had to make a living. So I didn't think of making a speech in the same way that I thought of appearing before the State Board of Education when Jim Folsom, Governor Folsom, was ex officio chairman. I'd already done things like that, and while I wasn't very comfortable, it was part of my job. But this new thing, I'm just trying to stress that really admit just how afraid and the fear that I had
anything to Eddie about it. He was rather young, and he was probably playing with Bill Smith or one of the neighbor boys, or Tony Albert's little girls from across the street would come over, and no, we wasn't even over. Oh yeah, I think we were over at where we lived now. I started to say we was back at Noel's apartment, where he was walking around with little Glenda Penny in her starched white dresses. But in any event, I made the talk, and it was reported in the newspaper, and what I said. And apart from some print about me coming to town, which there was in the newspaper, and who I was, and my experience in government. Incidentally, I was a kid just out of law school when I started practicing law. It is to be recalled that I had worked for the government. I was in Washington, and I'd gone to law school. I'd been in Europe during World War II. I had come back, worked for the General Accounting Office shortly, worked for Senator Hill, Lister Hill, United States Senator from Alabama, for 2 years, and then came to Atmore. By that time, it was hard, even though I knew I wanted to practice law, it was hard to give up in Washington and come back, simply because with Lois working and me working, why, we had a good salary, and I knew that to start out practicing law, it's the kind of venture that not many young people want to do it anymore. They find all kinds of ways of getting jobs with law firms, or working for the government, or working as an adjuster. They just don't have the... It's very seldom that you find a young lawyer nowadays that thinks that he can go to a small town and open up an office all by himself. He thinks that those days are past, but in actual fact, those days hadn't passed if the lawyer really wants to do to practice law in a small town and build himself up in a small town. It's harder in the city. But in any event, this gets me up to around 1954 is when I made that first talk. 1954. So I know that we were over at 610 South Trumbull Street, Atmore, the house that we still own there. And but after that, as soon as I made that speech, that was opening up a can of worms. 2 weeks later, maybe, I was invited to speak to the Civic Tan Club, which I did. And in no time, why, I was in church, and they wanted to make me, let's see, the first job I had in the church was president of the Methodist Men's Club. Just started off at the top. And then chairman of the official board of the Methodist Church in Atmore. And then the next thing, not chairman, just a member of the official board. And then I would teach the Sunday school class, the men's Sunday school class, once a month. And it took me a month to prepare the lesson. And I had prepared it down to about 20 or 25 minutes. And a lot of people, way later on when I stopped teaching, I would teach it once a month. Mr. Hodnett would teach it once a month. Mr. T.P. Whitten would teach it once a month. So I got all involved in church work until around 1958, about the time I ran for the legislature, I think. I was chairman of the official board of the church. So that was really, in 2 or 3 years, I had shot up from sitting on the back row of the church, the chairman of the official board, and a Sunday school teacher, and if the lights went out at the church, well, they called on me to do something about it, because I was the head man at the church. And also, the majority of the people want to get rid of a preacher. And that's a heck of a time to be chairman of the official board, because I didn't exactly want to get rid of him.
Was that, hey, who's that?
Robert Haygood.
Haygood.
I think he's dead now. I think he died of a cancer. So, I was being called on to make speeches. I was really exposing myself to the public. I became, in no time, I was president of the Parent Teachers Association at the school that you attended, Rachel Patterson. In no time, I was all from 1954, say, to 58 or 59. I ran for the legislature in 58. All during that period, I was also the county president of the Parent Teachers Association on the county level. So I met people from about the county. And I was also chairman of the March of Dimes throughout the whole county. And so and then I was a vice chairman of the Democratic Executive Committee. All these things were by appointment.
Weren't you a moose?
And the Moose organization was organized in Atmore, and I was the first governor of the Moose. So some of these things I'm going to leave out, but what I am trying to say is that once I got over this fear of appearing in public, it became easy for me, and I was paving my way toward a political career. So in 1956, I ran for the state legislature. Not the state legislature. I ran for a member of the delegate to the National Convention in 1956. I think we were going to California had I won. There was 8 people running, and I came in 5th, got in a runoff with a fella from Montgomery, and coming from Atmore was sort of a handicap, and I was defeated. But by that time, I had gone to every nook and cranny in the 2nd Congressional District, but I was beaten. Hard work did not do it. I worked harder than the rest, but the 1954 integration decision had come out. This was 2 years later, and so right during that campaign, I got a letter from the White Citizen Council of Montgomery. We understand that you were the nephew of Hugo Black, and is that true? And I wrote them back that I were, and I still was, but I did entertain my own views, but that took my goose. The mayor of Atmore, Mr. H. Dees, I believe. I know it's Mayor Dees, been mayor a long time. I was more or less his protege, and he was helpful to me, and I was helpful to him. And we went up to Montgomery, and we went to a motel. They had very few motels at that time. And Sam Englehart, who later on was to be the lieutenant governor, was sitting there. And the fellow that really was leading the ticket, maybe this was in the runoff. Anyway, my mayor was seeking help for me to be the 4th member to go to the National Convention. And Sam Englehart had married into the Bonner family in Camden, Alabama. Sam came from Macon County. He was a strong segregationist. He went all over the state making speeches, and he would start his speeches by saying, "Good evening, white folks." And of course, it appeared to me that the White Citizen Council was a political vehicle, and members of the White Citizen Council was vying for the position of being a better Southerner than some other Southerner, and it occurred to me, why do I have to get me a little card, pay $1 or what have you, and get a little card where I can go around all of the district and show I'm a member of the White Citizen Council when my people had fought in the war and good Southern people as anywhere. The slogan was our Southern way of life. And then they put out little smear sheets, or I wouldn't call it smear sheets, those kind of sheets, but rather a guide for people to vote. And that was a deadly thing. And in a county, they would list 4 people as being for our Southern way of life to indicate the other 3 were not for our Southern way of life, our traditional values in the South. And so I took, in the first go-round, Escambia County, and I had a lot of help in Connecticut County, and I had help from 2 lawyers in Baldwin County, and Butler County, my old mayor came. So I took several of the counties. I took most of the counties, but a fellow by the name of Russell, who some way disappeared at the convention and never did get to vote at the crucial time. In any event, I got beat, but getting back to my mayor taking me to see Engelhard, who more or less seemed to be in the position to put his blessings on an individual candidate, and he either won or lost with the endorsement of the White Citizens Council or that group of people. And Engelhard said that they had found out that I was a nephew of Hugo Black, and that was the thing that the people in Montgomery were concerned about. And the only thing that he knew that could counteract that would be for me to get on TV and to denounce my uncle Hugo. And Mayor D said, no, the boy's not going to do that. And I said, no, delegate to the national convention, any other political office is not worth cussing your kinfolk. And once I get on there, why, to win, I could got on there and did a Hugh Grant. That was Hugo Black's secretary, Hugh Grant. And he came in as a great states writer. He was over in Georgia, and he got in the newspaper in all the newspapers, making talks. Dr. Grant, who had been worked for Hugo as his secretary, but had gone on. He was sort of an intellectual and gone on and become, with the help of Hugo, the minister to Albania. The Italians came in, and he had to leave. And the minister to Thailand and the Japanese came in, and he had to leave. And way later, it's funny, in 1946, Hugh Grant was in Lister Hill's office, and I had to talk to him. And Grant was trying to report to the president. The president that had given him the appointment was Roosevelt. But for some reason, Roosevelt never saw fit to receive Grant, which was a tradition, or is a tradition, that once a minister returns to the state to get to see the president. And he wanted, when he came to Hill's office, he served before the war, and he still hadn't got to see the president. And he wanted to see Lister. And Lister Hill wouldn't see it. And he told me, he said, look at his eyes. He said, he's crazy. And well, I went back, I said, you ought to see him, Senator Hill, simply because, you remember us going to see Senator Hill and him giving us cookies and Coca-Colas, and you eating so many cookies and drinking so much Coca-Cola, but you didn't eat any more than Senator Hill, and how when we got ready to leave, that Senator Hill tried to get up from his walker, and he had tears in his eyes, and he had 2 nurses, And they would say, no, no, Senator, and I would say, no, no, you don't have to get up and tell us goodbye. But that was the man that I had worked for in 1946 and 47, and he was a great United States Senator, and had been in politics in all close to 40 years, if not 40, in the House and in the Senate. But I said to Senator Hill, Hugh Grant thinks of me as a messenger boy. I was Hugo Black, my uncle's sort of messenger boy, folding the mail, etc., as long as he worked there. And I said, hopefully you will talk to him. But he never would see Grant. But then that made Grant bitter, and in my view, and that caused him over in Augusta, Georgia, to be written up just about every week in the South magazine, and ex-aide Hugo Black blast his former employer, etc., the traitor to the South. And what I am saying is, if I had got on TV and said that Hugo was my uncle, my mother's brother, but that I myself could not abide by that awful decision of 1954, and I believe that I, in a little office such as delegate to the National Convention, that the people would have said, why, if Hugo Black's own nephew turns against him, that shows how so-and-so and so-and-so, and they would have voted for me, and that would have probably launched me into a political career that would have taken me to Congress. But I've always said there's 14 things more important than politics. Now, I don't know what the 14 things are, but I could name 14 things or more that's more important than politics. And so, after I was defeated in 1956, why, I made speeches all over my county. I knew I was in good shape in Escambia County, and I didn't talk about issues. It was more a personality thing. And so in 1958, I ran for the state legislature, and I got out and worked. I alluded somewhat to that, and I won, and I served 1959, 60, 61, 62. Your father was about 15 at the time, and he could drive me back and forth on many occasions, and he enjoyed that. And once or twice we were stopped by the state troopers, never for anything we were done, and as we would drive up, your father would say, he was 15 years old, good morning, and smile, and the state trooper would say that so-and-so just up the way, and so-and-so up the way, and he never did, but Eddie had been doing something wrong, and he was in the car with a licensed driver, and we would have got by unless he had really broken the law. But that part, and your daddy went up to the legislature, Eddie, and was a page boy, and Judge Webb, he was a senator and I was a representative. We were both from Escambia County. And I remember that we were over at the Whitley Hotel. We didn't always stay at the Whitley Hotel, I didn't. But on one week, when Eddie was up there, I know that we were at the Whitley Hotel, and Judge Webb and I would eat together, breakfast and supper. And both of us wanted our sons to dine with us. That's a human thing, and it's a human thing to have this contraption behind you trying to take it and never turn it on. So all that I've said thus far is
so far as that tape is concerned, is what is that saying? What on the desert air? What is something on the desert
I don't
air?
know.
Fragrance wasted on the desert air. But that more or less gets me up through covering a period of law practice. And so at this time, maybe you would want to bring me back to, do you need to use telephone?
No, leave talking.
Well, maybe you would like to, we take a little pause, and I just thought I would,
I want to mention one thing. We've talking about campaigning,
Yeah.
and I remember one time I was in, I don't know if somebody had carried me over there. I think I was little. I think maybe it was that 58 campaign. And you remember where the movie theater was in Bruton?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had gone up and down those streets, those big white houses, and I'd knock on the door and ask them if they'd vote for my daddy for, state representatives. And, they were all very nice, and, real nice to me. And, but I'd finally worked my way downtown, Bruton, and I was handing out cards, and I got right on the railroad track across from the theater.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is.
I could go put a quarter on the spot I was standing, and this fella walked up, and I handed him a card, and I said, "Mister, I'd appreciate if you'd vote for my daddy, Hugh Rozelle, for House of Representatives." And he looked down at me, and he said, "Well, I wouldn't vote for that son of a bitch if he was the only one running." And so I just kind of tucked my little head and, turned around and walked off. And I was really enjoying politicking up until that point. And I think it took me 4 years to get over that. And but then didn't I have a little radio? Didn't I make a radio?
Oh, yeah. When I was running for judge, while we were using every conceivable method to get me elected, and it occurred to me, or occurred to you, or occurred to somebody, if you yourself would, you was pretty young, just a kid, I know you offered to do it, make a talk on the radio. We didn't use TVs, certainly in accounting, they still don't. It's all, you either make talks to live groups or talk on the radio. But all of them used the radio extensively. And toward the end of that campaign, when I was running for judge, why, you made a talk. And I remember what you said. I remember one part of it. I was, naturally, these political campaigns, I'm glad you mentioned what you did, because you never mentioned that before. In all of my campaigning, only 2 people have ever told me that they wasn't going to vote for me. And all of running for delegates to the National Convention, running for judge, running for the state legislature. And one fella is a fellow that there's always a reason. I had him on the witness stand. I was fighting him in a lawsuit, and had him bouncing around up there, but he wouldn't talk to me for a long time. He started speaking to me, and I gave him a card, and he said, "I don't believe I can use that." And then there was another fella, Sam Henley, that he was obligated to the other man for representative. He voted for me as a judge, and he said he couldn't vote for me, but his wife was going to vote for me. And later on, he killed a man, and he asked the judge to appoint me his lawyer to defend him. And the case came out pretty good. I didn't get him out altogether, but it came out pretty good. He was a unique character. He was a brother to the county commissioner, and we had a
different kind of newspaper in Bruton at that time. Bill Brooks ran the newspaper, and he was always getting something good to print from the courthouse, and he thrived on controversy. And Sam's brother, Julian Henley, would always say something or was embroiled in something. But politics is rough and tough. They would naturally, they would tell if somebody's against you, that's just mild to tell his son. They wouldn't dare have said that to me. But the most effective part of my campaign, in my opinion, was your effort. When you got on the radio, you were going to make a trip. And I remember I was at the radio station. Go ahead. I was at the radio station. We're pausing because my tapes are going off, but that don't matter. We'll get this later on. I want to finish up about Eddie's political campaign talk on my behalf when I ran for the state, when I ran for judge in 1964. I took office in 65. But it wasn't so much. I think I mentioned about this deal down in Flomaton last night when we was talking about this particular campaign. I'd only been in the county 10 years. I thought that was a long time. But my opponent was, that was when I was running for the legislature. The theme was, I know you. You know me. I know you best. And that I was a newcomer. Let the stranger go. And if I hadn't got bit by a dog in one little community, I don't think the people in that community would have ever known it. But that dog bite me and me having taken him to a veterinarian made me known, and then people would say, you the one the dog bit? He. And I got every vote in Pineview. These little side issues better helps me to explain the effectiveness of Eddie's talk, because when I ran for judge, there was a lot of mudslinging. They were not so much your opponent, it's always his kinfolks or his admirers or the people that are for him, and they'll go out and tell all kinds of lies. For instance, my sister-in-law, Charlotte Yarber, it's sort of funny, she says, I knew that's not the truth. Sounded like some of that stuff could be the truth that they're saying about me. I know that's not the truth, and if you don't get on the radio and straighten out what they're saying about you, I'm going to do it myself. And I said, Charlotte, just leave it alone. But your type of speech, the type of talk that you gave, it was short, to the point. The point that you was getting across was, who could know the candidate any better than his son? And I remember your exact words, and it's been years since I thought about it, and you ended your talk by saying, I know my daddy. I know my daddy best. And words to, in principle, what you were saying, that I would make a good judge because you knew me, and you knew me better than all the other people that might be slinging mud. And you know that slinging mud sometimes don't, I want to tell you right now that I really greatly appreciate your effort on my behalf. I appreciated what everybody did, but I want to stop right here and say this, that right toward the end of a campaign, why your mother always got excited to the extent that she wanted to help, and she and Charlotte, they wanted to, when
I was running for judge. They wanted to be of help, and I said, well, you know, I was going from house to house, door to door, making speeches, working into the night, as I mentioned, staying in these different locales, eating with people, sleeping with people, with the people, staying all night at their houses, you know. Okay, I told, when Lois asked me what she could do, I said, well, go up to Plumberton, get on the Fanny Road, and she said, where's Fanny Road? And I said, well, fine, just go up there and find it. I forgot there's 2 Fanny Roads. And Lois, my wife, first wife, Eddie's mother, and her sister Charlotte, the school teacher, from Midland City, over in Dale County, Alabama. They got on the Fanny Road, and they ran into the same thing you ran in, Eddie. They ran into some people that said that they couldn't vote for me, but for another reason. I had told them, and it's good politics, is once you see a person, he may be on a tractor, he may be chopping cotton, he may be going away from you in a field, but don't you dare leave him out there, because he'll always say, well, Judge Rozelle, he came to my field, I was working, and I was flying my tractor. Of course, he'd make out like he wasn't even looking in my direction. But had I not gone to see him, while he would have probably said, he could have said, a lot of them said, well, he wouldn't even, he couldn't, I was working, and I wasn't going to stop work, and he didn't even walk out to where I was flying. But anyway, Lois, it was raining, and she and Charlotte had to walk through this mud to get to this barn. They could see 2 people smoking cigarettes squatted under the eaves of the barn there, sort of drizzling rain, and their shoes, feet were muddy. And when they got there, Lois is reported to have said, Ashley, that I would appreciate you voting for my husband, and Hugh Rozelle. And so the guys said, well, we can't vote for Hugh. We know Hugh, but we can't vote for him. Well, I knew, had learned that if I knew somebody was against me, not to tell Lois or Charlotte, because, and I guess Eddie too, because they just can't understand your ones that are closest to you, the ones you love, the ones that love you. They can't see any reason in the world why somebody would think their daddy or their husband was an SOB, that old bad thing. But they laughed, these 2 fellows that was sitting there at the barn or under the barn, and said, we know him, we'd vote for him if we could, but ladies, do you know where you are? And Lois said, we on the Fanny Road. And he said, yes, you're on the Fanny Road, but you're in Florida. And down in Florida, why, we can't vote for Hugh, old Hugh. We know it, and would like to vote for it. So that campaign was pretty rough, and what you said on television was toward the end, and that caused all the women to have tears. Nothing like some little son or daughter to get on the television where this rough and tough tumble and calling names. I'm sure some of the people that from me said bad things about my opponent. But one thing I did not do in private or public is to ever say one bad disparaging word against my opponent. I had that much sense and know-how coming from a political family. I remember when Mama used to cry when she would hear something said about her brother, the United States Senator, Hugo Black. But there came a time when she would just smile if she heard anything bad. And that was a crushing blow that you received on that railroad track right in front of Devon Wiggins' store there. That's enough to make you want to tuck your little tail and go home. And for anybody, I would like to know, as a matter of fact, but this other thought, a lot was said against me. And one old fella, his name was Griffith, was way over there in that part of our county where we own that little 20 acres where there's no people. And there's a fella Griffith Briggs. There's a fella Griffith lives back there, and he'd always listen to his radio. And he said, you know, they're cussing Hugh Rozelle. They cussing. Said, I hear him on the radio. And I had a little radio program going. I was reporting the Wilmington News before I ran for office, and that helped me with the people quite a bit. And that was part of the strategy. Sam Ford with the radio station in Wilmington gave me $50 a month to report the Wilmington News. Well, it wasn't so much the $50 a month, even though I was getting up and getting to my office and getting on the telephone and talking, giving out the Atmore News over the radio to the Wilmington station. It did introduce me to large numbers of people that I would meet them, say, well, we've been hearing you for months and months, but we've never seen you. You know, another thing that we had going was that I announced at the wrestling matches, and I was supposed to be paid either $5 or $10 a night, but that was to get myself before the public, and I was able to get a ticket for myself and for you. You was rewarded. You could attend the wrestling matches. I know I asked for me and my son tickets. They said, we'll give you a ticket. And I asked one for Eddie so he could go and watch those people. And it's a funny thing. You know, we used to watch old Tom Drake. And Tom Drake, ordinarily, the rough guys on television, in a wrestling match, are the nicest fellas back in the room, where the real nice guys are not so nice in the back room. But Tom Drake, the Speaker of the House of Representatives right today, was the exception. And we were talking, and he said, you are a lawyer, yes. He said, you know, I think I want to be a lawyer. And I was already a member of the legislature. That was to stay in, you know. And he said, and I think I would like to run for the legislature. And he did all those things. And I don't know that I encouraged him or caused him to do that. He probably already had it on his mind, but it was something that he liked to talk about. But in this reminiscence, just one thing after another occurs to you about the campaign, and that speech that you gave was one of the highlights. I don't know whether Charlotte gave a speech or not. I suspect she did or wanted to do it, and
I kind of suspect you're blowing it up just a little bit, don't you?
No, it really went over. Some old ladies and some of those, especially the older people, they said, you know, said when your own son gets on the television as young as he was,
and talks like that we couldn't vote against you, Mr. Hugh. We couldn't vote against you, Mr. Hugh. So that wasn't, no, I'm not blowing it up at all. Well, where do you think we are in the overall
Let's go to
context of this interview?
We've gone over most of the Atmore, being a lawyer and running for legislature and judge. Let's go when you left Ashland and going to Washington, D.C. Think about that a minute. Let me turn it off and get it refocused and everything.
Okay.
Stays up a little high.
Where did we have lunch yesterday? This lady poured coffee all over this guy. He jumped, but he laughed, and everybody was laughing because this old woman was so countrified.
Yeah.
And she got her $1 out of one lady, and I never leave any tip word, just some
Sit on back there.
butch lady. And but I left a quarter for her. Mary Jane has been proud of me.
25 cents.
Changing the, instead of going to the Washington.
You asked, Eddie, you asked me to maybe start off leaving Escambia County and going back to the time that I left Clay County and went to Washington. And I think this would be more of an appropriate time, so I won't forget it, to talk about our home life when you were growing up, in particular, the trips that we made.
Okay, now we'll try this. The light wasn't too good over on the other part of the room, so we kept jumping around. And so, let's see, Dave, won't you tell us a little bit about, people always talk about how you could bounce back and come back from any adversity. Why don't you talk about that part a little bit?
Yeah, Eddie, I think that area is real interesting. That area, my machine here, I'm taping this, is something that I asked my 2 grandchildren to come down and listen to. In a way, a lot of it is funny, but in another way, it teaches a very valuable lesson. And as Judge Webb or somebody said it don't matter what happened to Judge Rozelle. Said you can throw him in a heap cow manure or what have you, and every time he'll get up and come out smelling like a rose.